the refrigerator screwed up for you or no?
No. I mean, I'm going to have some of that, which, we'll go with Nat sound, but I'm going to be able to clean up a lot. I'm doing 2 mics a lot, so I'm going to be able to eliminate a lot of that.
Okay. When I was in medical school, I was initially going to be a pediatrician, and I really enjoyed my medicine rotation. I came down here when I was a senior medical student to do a rotation, mainly because I had friends here in Indianapolis, and I wanted to spend a month here. Every rotation I asked to go on, whether it was cardiology or GI or infectious disease, all the rotations were filled. The only one that was open was hematology oncology. And I said, fine, because I wanted to come down here to be with my friends. So I spent a month with this. Now, this was just a few years after Larry had his first patient treated with testis cancer. And I was rounding with him and in the clinic with him, and I saw patients who had huge masses in their chest, and they were coming back 6 weeks, 9 weeks later, and these masses had melted away. At the end of this month, I sat down with Larry outside the patio here, and I said, I've decided what I want to do with the rest of my life. And he said, what? I said, I want to do oncology, and I want to practice with you. And so it turned out I was able to do that. And throughout the years of my training, I had Larry as a role model. He was a guy who was selfless in doing clinical research. I wanted to try to not let him down, so I did clinical research and did clinical trials, and I was able in my own little niche to have some success. But along the way, it was he who got me into this field, and it was he who inspired me and continues to inspire me to this day.
Great. I got goosebumps.
No.
When you said, I want to study oncology, I want to work with you.
Yeah.
It just
The hubris of it. Yeah, the other version I say is, and I want to be your boss too, but I don't usually. One day I want to be your boss. I don't say that. So.
Now, were you at IU Medical School?
No, I went to Rush up in Chicago. Yeah, and so the other story of that is that I did this month rotation with Larry, and Larry wrote a recommendation to me, to the head of medicine here, saying I was the best medical student he ever had. So we have a match program that matches you up, and so I ranked Indiana University as #1 on my match. And match day comes, and I open up the envelope, and I matched to Rush, which is where I did my residency. And I couldn't quite figure this out, and I found out a few years later that Larry was just an assistant professor at the time, and a recommendation for assistant professor that says he's the best student he ever had. I was the only student he ever had. It really didn't mean anything to them. Today, if I had that recommendation, it would go a lot farther. Yeah.
And is there anything else that, knowing this story is going to be told, is there anything else that you can think of? You covered a lot of great ground. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
I just don't know if there's anything else that on the face of cancer, treatment has changed because of this thing he did in 1970 something, or how life is different today, or I don't know. I mean, I'm just
I guess I do want to talk about Steve Williams a little bit because we didn't mention him at all. So when I first joined the faculty here at Indiana University, there were just 4 oncologists. It was Larry Einhorn, Steve Williams, George Sledge, and myself. Steve Williams was a fellow here when I came here as a medical student. Steve himself had just a stellar career, and again, Larry was his mentor, but developed a treatment that would basically cure ovarian germ cell tumors, and he was a pioneer for that. Steve became the head of the Cancer Center. He was the founding director of this. This was a lot of time and effort on his part. To be honest, Larry was a logical choice, but Larry didn't want to deal with all the administrative details with it. But Steve put forward this cancer center as a National Cancer Institute. He put forward the application for Indiana University to become an NCI designated cancer center, National Cancer Institute, and led this consortium now of bringing together scientists, behavioral scientists, clinicians together to form this cancer center. Unfortunately, Steve himself developed cancer. He developed a melanoma. and died from this. He died a few years before the onset of this tremendous immunotherapy that we now see. Jimmy Carter, who had melanoma, now has a complete remission with his melanoma in his brain. So Steve Williams, in many ways, is a little bit like Brian Piccolo, a guy who was born just a few years too early before he could witness some of the great advances for the treatment of his disease. But again, these guys are all inspiring people that move us every day to make a difference.
Great. That is a wrap, sir.
Okay,
I'm gonna run home and
go to the bathroom.